I'm going to Kentucky, I'm gonna check on Mitch, 'cause I believe McConnell has hit his final glitch. Shake him, shake him, shake him, wake him if you can, or give him a hug and pull the plug. Stop lying about that man. First, call the hearse, time to bury the worst. Mitch, need an undertaker over a nurse. No half-mast when he passed, that's the end of a curse. Scott got to stop lying. That's the point of my verse. I shed no tears, feel no fear. Mitch been glitching for years. Show him the love he showed mine throughout his career. Account for what he owe. His account in arrears. Might stomp my Timbs on his grave, but I just copped a new pair. I'm going to Kentucky, I'm gonna check on Mitch, 'cause I believe McConnell has hit his final glitch. Shake him, shake him, shake him, wake him if you can, or give him a hug and pull the plug. Stop lying about that man.
Federal officials say the government is doing its job, enforcing the law, protecting the public, and securing borders.
Fuck ice, we ain't gonna play it nice. Oh, you wanna fight? Keep sucking daddy's dick on the far right. Fuck ice, we ain't gonna play it nice. Oh, you wanna fight? Keep sucking daddy's dick on the far right. Fuck ice, 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 ice. Fuck ice, 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 ice. Fuck ice, 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 ice. Ice, 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 ice. Fuck ice, we ain't gonna play it nice. Oh, you wanna fight? Keep sucking daddy's dick on the far right.
Chaos erupting in the streets of Los Angeles as protesters and police clash. Tensions escalating Sunday as thousands of protesters took to the streets in response to President Donald Trump's extraordinary deployment of the California National Guard.
Ice,
ice, ice.
fuck ice, we ain't gonna play it nice. Oh, you wanna fight? Keep sucking daddy's dick on the far right. Fuck ice, we ain't gonna play it nice. Oh, you wanna fight? Keep sucking daddy's dick on the far right. Fuck ice, 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 ice. Ice, 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 ice. Ice, 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 ice. Ice, 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 ice. Fuck ice, we ain't gonna play it nice. Oh, you wanna fight? Keep sucking daddy's dick on the far right.
Yo, Mac, this you? I hope you can hear me, cause I got a message. Donald Trump is fucking you.
Mega motherfuckers, I know you hate me. Don't let hating me be all you can be. Don't let hating me be all you can see. Cause Donald fucking you while you fucking with me. Yeah. Mega motherfuckers, I know you hate me. Don't let hating me be all you can be. Don't let hating me be all you can see. Cause Donald fucking you while you fucking with me.
I ain't gonna hold you. Let me make this brief. I got some unredacted news about this PDF in chief. You offered him your loyalty, he offered you relief. When you get nothing in exchange, you got hustled by a thief. You're loyal to a four, his loyalty is faulty. We disagree on season, and that's why I'm fucking salty. Donald taking money, Van snatching land, and you so busy hating me, no need to pry it from your hand. Promises of whiteness, y'all planning and clapping. 1865, it ain't gonna happen, he fucking you. We've heard it all before, you ain't getting more. For sure, he's showing you the door. Hard to watch the setup, my attempt to warn. Regret this through the awakening, ringing the alarm. But it's shit so sweet when you do my family harm. But your fucking family good, giving up the family farm.
Mega motherfuckers, I know you hate me. Don't let hating me be all you can be. Don't let hating me be all you can see. Cause Donald fucking you while you fucking with me. Yeah. Mega motherfuckers, I know you hate me. Don't let hating me be all you can be. Don't let hating me be all you can see. Cause
Good evening and welcome to the Smoke Pit. I'm Tim Boyden, Writer's Room Lead for 5051 Veterans, Substack. Tonight on our show, we'll be discussing the part nobody films, what veterans risk by showing up at protests, and why we keep doing it anyway. Joining me on tonight's panel, it's Katie Chordak, the president of 5051 Veterans, who herself was arrested with 65 fellow veterans at the Veterans Against Fascism Cannon House building protest in D.C. in April. And Carl Abel, our 5051 Veterans Media and Operations Director, who is renowned for sneaking by the Secret Service at the White House while wearing his Veterans Against Trump hoodie and getting pulled out of the tour line because he was so well dressed to get a special tour of the White House gardens. Our special guest tonight is Dana Briggs, who we profiled in our Substack last week. Dana Briggs is a U.S. Air Force veteran and a member of 5051 Veterans, Veterans for Peace, and Common Defense, who has been involved in protests at ICE's concentration camp in Broadview, Illinois. Dana has been actively fighting ICE across the country for 16 years now. The topic of this show tonight is very timely because late this afternoon we got news that one of our stalwart fellow veterans, Cindy Johnson Potts, was arrested in Greene County, Missouri at a protest against ICE, using the already overcrowded county jail to house ICE detainees. Katie, can you give us an update on what's going on with Cindy at this point?
I can, thanks, Tim. So Cindy Potts is one of our veterans. She's a female vet out there in Missouri, and the woman that was actually filming that is also a veteran. Right now, Cindy and 5 other people, including a pastor, are under arrest in Greene County, Missouri. They are being booked. So 20 people are in line before them. This is the number. Please call this number, 417-868-4040, and ask them to book and process our sister in arms in a timely fashion, because there are 20 people in line. If we keep tying up their phone lines, it will make them move a little bit faster. It's an effective use of our time. Anybody that's watching, you can just make the call, keep it very civil, very peaceful. We're just asking them to process them quickly, let us know their bail so that we can get them out. But yes, that is the status of them right now. They have not been booked or processed. It was Cindy Potts, which is our sister in arms, a pastor, and 4 other people that were detained today in Missouri.
Thanks, Katie. And so that provides a great segue to Dana and what he has experienced. And if you read our Substack, you may be familiar with Dana's case. But as I said, Dana has been doing this for 16 years. He's been fighting ICE for 16 years across the nation. So, Dana, can you tell us just how'd you get started on this?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on tonight. So after the Patriot Act was approved back in 2003, and out of that, it basically birthed Department of Homeland Security and a redone what used to be known as Immigration and Naturalization Service, the old INS, essentially turned into ICE, and then they split out Border Patrol and all that other stuff. Suddenly realized about 10 years down the road that there was something very wrong with what was going on. And at the time I was living in the Pacific Northwest, and I have a lot of friends that are in the migrant farm workers community. And a lot of people may not realize this, but there are tens of thousands of migrant farm workers in the state of Washington, as an example, and it's not just California and the Midwest where there are. So because of the fact that ICE has technically an authority region 100 miles from all international borders of the United States, the entire county that I lived in, which is right next to Canada, fell within that 100-mile range. And in fact, if you look at a map of the United States along the upper northwest coast of Washington, you will notice that 100 miles takes you all the way from the border with Canada to just about the northern parts of Seattle. So ICE is essentially authorized to roam in and out of that area. And we noticed that they were picking up a lot of people and doing raids and all that other stuff, but a whole lot of folks weren't paying attention prior to Trump coming along, and then in Trump 1.0, things got ratcheted up, and there was abuses going on. During the Biden administration, a lot of that continued also. And then about 4 years ago, I moved here to Illinois. There was a processing center close to where I lived in Bellingham, Washington, but the detention center for that part of the U.S. is in Tacoma, Washington, the Northwest Detention Center. And there was a bunch of us who did lots of protesting down at the NWDC because there was rumors coming from the inside that they were experiencing the same thing that a lot of people are experiencing right now: crap food, little to no water, little to no medical care, abuse in some cases, and we were trying to get people out. Sometimes we were successful and sometimes we weren't. So this has been going on for a lot longer than people realize. The severity of it has fluctuated depending upon which administration has been in power. So under the Trump regime, both parts, it's been very severe. Under Obama, it was, I would call moderate, bordering on severe, and I would say the same thing on the Biden side of things. So that's kind of what got me involved in all this, plus the fact that among the other organizations that you said I'm a part of, I am a 30-plus year member of the ACLU, and so I also pay attention to human rights and have been advocating for human rights issues for decades also, not just for the undocumented. So there's the beginning.
So can you just tell us a little bit, not a little bit, but tell us in your own words, what happened in Broadview, what brought you to Broadview, what happened, and where it stands now?
I live in Rockford, Illinois, which is about 70 miles west of Chicago, and it's probably 250,000 people in this part of the state. But, you know, when you live next to a huge metropolitan area like Chicago, there's all kinds of cultural events going on. And one of the other things I had done while I was in the Pacific Northwest was working with indigenous tribes on environmental issues. So there was an indigenous festival that was going on September the 27th of last year that I decided to go to close to downtown Chicago. And I went down there, and the Broadview facility had been in the news for about 3 to 4 weeks at that point because the protests had ramped up at that point at the beginning of September. So when I got done with the festival about mid-afternoon, I thought to myself, well, why don't I go to Broadview and just observe what's going on and see what's happening and see if there's, you know, talk to some of the protesters and see what I could help them out with. Got there at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There was probably 50 to 60 protesters. There was a chain link fence that was across the public roadway that Customs and Border Patrol had put up across that street to prevent people from getting onto the driveway of the facility, which they had been doing for the previous 2 to 3 weeks. But they had put the fence up without the knowledge of the Broadview Police Department or government. And then there was also a chain link fence that was all the way towards the back of the entrance area that exited onto an empty parking lot where there was basically an abandoned warehouse. So the CBP had kind of fenced themselves in. There were 3 agents when I was there that were standing on the roof with chemical weapons, you know, like tear gas and things like that, pepper balls. And in fact, there had been the famous case of a Presbyterian minister who had been shot in the head the week or 2 before that by agents that had been standing on that same thing. So people are yelling at the agents, and you know, I put my 2 cents in, having known what they were capable of doing. And so, and we weren't trying to tear down the fence, and we weren't throwing anything at the agents and all this other stuff. Around about 4 o'clock, the agents started firing tear gas the fence from the roof, and they did it about 2 or 3 times. So I, among others, were trying to help those that hadn't experienced that kind of nonsense before, to get their eyes cleared out and everything else. Between 4 and about 5 o'clock, there were some vehicles that came through the back gate out of that abandoned parking lot. And they purposely, instead of going through the chain link fence that actually surrounds the facility, which, by the way, has barbed wire on it also, they stopped the cars on the street, and a bunch of agents plus Greg Bovino got out of those vehicles and purposely publicly perp walked a bunch of undocumented folks down the street and through the little parking lot area that they have there and into the facility. That probably pissed me off more than anything else. Okay. I mean, it's one thing to arrest somebody because they're, quote unquote, breaking the law, but to make a spectacle out of them is, in my estimation, nonsense. Around about 5 o'clock, they decided to make a show of force and drive some vehicles out the front gate down the public street. A bunch of agents, primarily CBP, lined both sides of the street and told everybody get off the street, get on the sidewalks. We all did. Nobody tried to interfere with vehicles or anything else. We assumed that they were hauling some undocumented that had been processed out of that facility off to wherever they were going to take them to for a detention center. And then one vehicle was coming back, went through the gate, and then the agents started to exit the street and back up towards the gate. And about the time that most of them were in there, one of the field commanders yelled out, "Clear the streets." Now, on either side of me were a couple of protesters and some independent news media camera people. And I just stood my ground because I know that CBP and ICE do not have traffic enforcement authority. Secondarily, there was no vehicles coming and going. Thirdly, we were following them as they were backing into the thing, but we were at least 4 to 5 arms lengths away from them, not attempting to stop them from anything. And so when they yelled out, "Clear the streets," I yelled back, "Why?" And at that point, they started marching forward, and one of the agents hit me in the chest, and I went flying backwards, and you showed the picture of me on the ground, and there's viral videos all over the internet of the actual incident happening. And as I was handing my cell phone off to another protester, I saw a hand coming towards the right side of my face, and I just instinctively whacked at it because I thought I was going to get, pummeled on. At that point, one of the agents turned around and looked at one of the field commanders and said, "Arrest." And the field commander said yes, and that's when they threw me over and arrested me with zip ties and then hauled me into the little parking lot facility they had there, and I sat outside for a little while they were gathering information. Now, technically, CBP was the one that zip-tied me, but the agency that actually arrested me was Homeland Security Investigations, which is kind of a sister organization. Normally, HSI runs around overseas, kind of like the FBI does sometimes, doing international investigations on behalf of the United States, and in this case having to do with immigration things. So HSI took a statement from the agent whose hand I had hit, and then they hauled me inside of the facility, and I could see about probably 12 to 15 undocumented sitting in the main room there, all looking scared out of their minds. And they took me back to a back room, and in the back room there were 2 non-undocumented that had also been detained, thrown in there, one of whom was also a vet, I found out later, and has now become a friend. And he's also a lawyer. We sat there in silence for a while, and probably for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then eventually they um, called me out, took the zip ties off, handcuffed me in front, and told me that they were charging me with felony assault of a federal officer for having whacked somebody's arm. Okay. So during that whole process also, I had told them that I had a heart condition and all my meds were at home, 70 miles away. And they turned around and said, do you have any of them here? And I said, no. So they decided, probably wise on their part, that they were going to take me to the nearest hospital to make sure that I didn't die on them. So I ended up, they carted me off to the Loyola Medical Center at around 7 p.m. This was on Saturday. Went into the emergency room. I remember there was staff there. I had a Trump, a Veterans Against Trump t-shirt on. And they were yelling, oh, we're arresting vets now. I could hear a couple of them yelling at the CBP agents, or the HSI agents, actually. Took me to a back room, and they handcuffed me to one of the gurneys, and I was handcuffed there for about 6 hours while they ran a bunch of tests, MRIs, blood work, and all that other stuff. Got me some immediate meds, you know, for my heart condition, all that other stuff. Patched up the places on my elbows and my wrists where the zip ties had cut into my wrists and my elbows when I hit the ground, because I had put those down to keep my head from whacking the ground, because when you're on blood thinners like I am, you don't want to be whacking your head, because the brain bleed's not a good thing, okay? So I got through all that. HSI refused to take a prescription to a pharmacy. They said that they wouldn't do that. So at about 1 o'clock in the morning, they unshackled me and then got into a car, and we drove off to some undisclosed facility. I'm assuming on the west side of Chicago, which is a DHS processing facility, not for undocumented, but for other people that they arrest. And I was in there from about 1 until 4 in the morning, until they asked a bunch of questions about where I was from, had I been in the military, took my fingerprints, finally read me my Miranda rights after about 9 hours, had me sign a piece of paper, took a DNA swab out of my cheek, and never addressed the incident at all. So I'm answering questions factually without an attorney, because I'm thinking to myself, this is partly a joke, but it's partly serious. I have absolutely no sense of self-preservation. Okay, so I don't care what people think about when I'm talking to them. If they want an answer to something, I'll give it to them. If I don't think that they deserve that answer, I'm not going to give it to them. So I'm giving them factual info, but we're not talking about the incident itself. Okay. Then at about 4 in the morning, they haul me out. And I have to admit that at least the HSI agents in that facility were very professional. So they had uncuffed me and just allowed me to sit in a chair. They said ordinarily they cuff people, but they figured that I was an old man and that I wasn't going to be a flight risk out of a heavily guarded facility and all that other stuff. And then they hauled me downtown to the Chicago Metropolitan Correction Center, which is a 30-story federal prison. And I was incarcerated with 3 other individuals who had been arrested within a couple of hours of me on the 25th floor. And I spent Sunday morning from roughly 4:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock approximately on Monday in the facility with about 100 other inmates, mostly black and brown people. And didn't know when I was going to get out. Had made no phone calls, was waiting for a federal judge to decide, whether I should be detained, continue to be detained or not, and all that other stuff. And finally, at about 9:30 in the morning on Monday, we were taken to the federal courthouse, which is about a 5-minute drive from the prison. And we sat around in there. I was in there for about 4.5 hours until I saw the judge. And the judge decided, based upon recommendations from pretrial screening and all this other stuff, and I had also been assigned a federal defender, so I didn't have to pay for anything, that I wasn't a flight risk. So they released me under a $10,000 bond, which is not bail. It's a bond, and there was conditions assigned to the bond. One of which was, as I was not allowed to leave Northern Illinois until this whole thing got resolved through a trial or charges dismissed or whatever. And if I did, then they would rearrest me and I'd have to pay the 10 grand. Okay. So I didn't have to pay anything up front, so to speak. Got back, they re-released me. Went back to the facility with the rest of them, got booted out of the facility along with one other individual who had been arrested on a misdemeanor, and they kept the felony charge intact at that point. And I was out on the streets, and I had no wallet, no phone, no way to contact anybody, because I had locked my wallet up in my vehicle. My phone was being held by some protester whose name I didn't even know, and a news crew from the local CBS station in Chicago happened to see me there, and they had been monitoring all this that had been going on. They came up and asked me if I wanted to do an interview, and I thought to myself, well, should I do this? My federal defender would probably not be happy about it. And I said, well, I'll give you 5 minutes as long as we don't go into a hell of a lot of detail. So that's all on videotape too. Okay, I mean, it's CBS News Chicago. And when we got done with the interview, I asked them whether the news crew, which was a reporter and a cameraman, if they knew where the nearest homeless shelter was. And and they said about 12 blocks away, and I said, okay, I'll go spend the night there and then figure out how to get home after that. At one point in my life, I had been homeless as an adult. Okay, so this was nothing new to me. They said, wait a minute, let me, I asked them if they could give me a ride, and they said no, they couldn't for liability reasons. And then the reporter said, give me a few minutes, and about 10 minutes later, he comes back after having a phone call, and he had contacted the National Lawyers Guild, and the Lawyers Guild had been tracking me and the others and where we were, and 10 minutes later, there was somebody from the Lawyers Guild, a volunteer, that came down and got me, took me all the way back to Broadview, contacted the protester who had my phone, so I got my phone back, broke into my car. Fortunately, I had roadside service. And because in the process of being arrested and incarcerated, CBP and everybody else had lost my key fob. And so that was taken to a dealership so they could get a new one done. And then a volunteer from the NLG drove me all the way from Chicago to Rockford, 70 miles, to get me home. Okay? Now, we'll try and shorten this down even further. A few weeks later, there was the arraignment hearing. The government decided, probably partly because whatever they were seeing in the way of evidence was sketchy at best, that they were going to downgrade my charge from felony assault to a misdemeanor impediment. Okay. And two other individuals who had been actually carrying weapons to the protest had also been arrested the same day I was, and they had taken their case before a grand jury, and for the first time in a long, long time, the grand jury decided not to indict them. So the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago was probably thinking to themselves, well, if we can't get people with weapons indicted, what are we going to do with this guy? Okay. So then it got downgraded during the arraignment. Then there was a status hearing in early November, and a trial date had been set for December 8th and 9th, and I asked for a jury trial. And then in about the middle of November, the government offered a plea deal, which basically was if I would agree to the quote unquote set of facts about what had happened from the time that I was knocked down until I was arrested and then hauled and put out into the parking lot, that they would drop all the charges as long as I stayed out of trouble for 6 months. Now, in my mind, I had neither assaulted nor impeded an officer. And then secondarily, if I had agreed to that, it would be on my record. Now, at my age, I don't really care if anybody sees that, okay, because I'm retired, I'm not going after a job, yada, 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 okay. But for somebody younger than me, that might have been an issue. So for me, it wasn't an issue. I basically told them to stuff it. And then a week later, on November the 20th, was the last status hearing that was coming up. And 20 minutes before it was happening, I was allowed to attend these via telephone from here in Rockford instead of going all the way into Chicago. My attorney calls me up and she goes, "They're dropping all the charges." And I started laughing because I'm thinking to myself, they didn't have enough of anything to get away with what they were attempting to get away with. Now, the judge asked him why, and they basically said that it was after further review and discussion within the office that they considered it the fairest thing to do. Okay. The judge said fine, but then the judge had also been the judge for the other 5 individuals who had been arrested that day at Broadview, all of whom had their charges eventually dropped. Normally, when a federal judge writes a dismissal notice for a court case, it's maybe a half a page to a page long. In this particular case, he wrote 9.5 pages on me and a few of the others, and blasted the hell out of the United States government for even having arrested us to begin with. That court case you can find online also, and the decision by the judge. And that's part of what's being used in the current lawsuit, well, as kind of a backdrop for the current lawsuit that I'm involved in. Okay, so that brings us up to the point where I have no charges against me. There's nothing on my record. But the issue was, other than the fact that I was arrested, but the issue was is that they had taken my DNA sample. And they had taken the DNA samples of everybody else. And DHS last year apparently put out a memo saying that regardless of what the federal law said, that they were going to be taking DHS samples of anybody that they arrested for any reason. Okay. A few months roll by, and I get contacted by a civil rights litigation group in New York, one of whom is probably watching this evening. And apparently there are a couple of university research centers that have been tracking this kind of nonsense for more than a decade of DNA samples being taken from people when they're arrested by federal authorities. And they asked myself and 3 other individuals if we would be willing to be plaintiffs in a lawsuit against the United States government for having violated our 4th Amendment rights, which was illegal search and seizure of our persons. Our First Amendment rights, because this kind of puts a damper on whether people will go out and protest again if they think they're going to be abused by the federal government. And then the Administrative Code of the United States having to do with following federal laws and some other things. The legal team is doing this all pro bono. Yay. My principal attorney is a former assistant United States attorney from the Southern District of New York, which is the premier district in the federal judicial system. The local, and there's other attorneys with that law firm. The attorneys in the Chicago area, because that's where the court case was filed, you have to have local attorneys. The chief attorney for that is a constitutional lawyer and also teaches constitutional law at Loyola University. And then there's a third law group that's involved where the chief lawyer, and there are others, is considered one of the leading experts in the United States on the Fourth Amendment and was a former law clerk for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So we're basically not messing around with this. And where the case is at this point, it was filed on May the 6th. There was some delivery issues to some of the defendants, but the defendants include the secretaries of DHS, the head of the FBI, the Attorney General of the United States, the head of the CBP, the head of ICE, and all of those agencies together. My estimation is that if we get what we're asking for, which is essentially the expungement of our DNA and all that data, and then forcing the federal government into doing what they are supposed to be doing and not abusing the federal laws, and a Supreme Court case that you will read about in the actual lawsuit filing, which I think you guys are going to put up a link to that so that people can read that. It's 88 pages, by the way, so be patient as you're reading through it. If we get what we're asking for, this will affect every birthright and naturalized citizen in the United States. And then we will worry about what do we do about all the undocumented who have probably had their DNA taken also.
Okay. So Dana, I want to kind of move into kind of a question area. But before I do want to mention what's unique. I'm from the Chicagoland area. And people don't realize how many immigrants are in that Chicagoland area. According to FWD.US, an estimated 12% of individuals in Chicago, or 1,153,000, are either undocumented immigrants or live with an undocumented immigrant. 215,000 U.S. citizen children in Chicago live with an undocumented parent. 47,000 U.S. citizen spouses are married to an undocumented immigrant. Some 317,000 undocumented individuals in Chicago have lived in the U.S. for more than 2 years, with 217,000 of those living in the U.S. for more than 20 years. And this is as of last year. So they have been hitting Chicago hard. That's why Bavino went there, and so I just wanted to kind of provide that context of what the environment, why it is so tense in Chicago, just like in Minnesota, just like in other cities that have high levels of immigrants living in them. And it's really intense. I know from driving around Pilsen, for instance, when I'm visiting my mom, and other areas that have high concentrations of immigrants, Cicero, that it's you're living in a fascist nightmare for if you're an undocumented immigrant here in Chicago, because they can end up in that facility. And that Broadview facility, I've been there 3 times for protests. It looks like something straight out of Nazi Germany. But you mentioned the barbed wire. They got the camera now on the roof. And they do this, I notice, with ICE facilities a lot. They got a location that's right up against the railroads. And so there's no back access to it. And so you have to go through this gauntlet to get to it. The vehicles, you talked about the vehicles. You have to go through, they have concrete bunkers now on this street, like we're in Baghdad or something. You have to go through, not me, but the ICE officials, the ICE officers, the ICE agents have to go through these concrete bunkers. It's a recipe for unrest at the very best, and for confrontation. Quite honestly. They've just put this in that location for a very specific strategic reason, in my estimation, that really reflects poorly on the judgment of our government officials. So I just wanted to provide that context about Chicago and what's going on. But I want to turn it over first to Katie and let her ask some questions that she may have.
So Dana, I wanna thank you for coming on and sharing your story, because as veterans, the four of us sitting here, we're all out at actions, and as a fellow arrestee, I would like to know, or for you to explain to people, because I know my why, right? Like why I am out facing ICE in Florida, and why I think it's important that veterans use their voice in this moment. What is your why? Like why as a veteran do you think it is important for us to show up to places like Broadview? I show up to a place called Baker County Facility. It's here in Florida. What is your why, Dana? Like for as a vet, like what is that why for you? Why do you go face the federal government?
The first thing is the humanity, or perhaps the lack of humanity, that's being shown by too many individuals in the United States towards people who, for whatever the reason is that they decide that they're going to cross the border, or trying to do so that they get out of whatever their particular situation is and hopefully get into something better. Crossing the border undocumented is a misdemeanor. It is a civil offense. It is not a criminal offense. And all of these individuals that are being rounded up are being treated like they were criminals, as opposed to a civil infraction. Would we do the same thing to people who run red lights, round them up, throw them into jail just because they ran a red light? No. Okay, so why are we doing it to individuals like this? The second part of it has to do with, as we all know, because we keep saying it to ourselves and we keep saying it to anybody who's not a vet, we swore an oath to the Constitution. And part of the Constitution is the Fifth Amendment of the United States, which calls for due process. Okay? Due process under the law applies to everybody who resides, doesn't matter whether you're a citizen or not, but resides within the boundaries of the U.S. So that is inviolable unless we have a Supreme Court decision that runs somewhere contrary to that. And if that happens, then we've got bigger problems than what we have right now. The other part of it, which is kind of in conjunction with that, is, to put it bluntly, I'm pissed off at both the Democratic and the Republican parties, because for more than 50 years, if not longer, they have not made a good faith attempt at passing comprehensive immigration reform in this country, to set down the ground rules about who can come in, when do they come in, how long is the procedure going to take, what is the procedure, yada, yada, yada. Now, apparently there was an attempt to do that in the Congress before Trump 2.0 came into power, and then reportedly Trump contacted the Republicans in the Senate and said, nix the whole thing because I want to be able to run on the immigration issue again. So there had been a little bit of an attempt between Democrats and Republicans in the previous Congress to do something about immigration reform, but the whole thing got squashed. So that's part of the reason why I'm doing this. Are we a nation of laws, or aren't we? Because if we're not going to be a nation of laws and we're only going to be a nation of privileges, then that means that everybody that's in power can change it at the drop of a hat, and we're going to be at the mercy of whoever happens to hold the stick of power at any given point in time, and we might as well just rip up the Constitution and get rid of it. There's your answer.
Dana, can I, because I know that we said that you're an Air Force vet, can I ask you what era you're from?
I am a Vietnam era vet. You notice I didn't say Vietnam vet. I'm a Vietnam era vet, and I'm a Cold War vet. But I come from a family where my father and my mother and my brother all served, and my sister was married to somebody in the military. And I've had at least one ancestor that has fought, direct ancestor that has fought in every major war that the United States has ever been involved in, with the exception of the War of 1812. And I'm descended from 2 Revolutionary War soldiers. So this was the family business. And fortunately, I broke that chain with my own offspring, because I don't want them going out and being at the mercy of the idiots in the White House currently, or even previously, since the beginning of this particular century. So, yes, I remember as a child seeing all the TV coverage of the Vietnam War. I went into the Air Force Academy 1 year before it officially ended, and then graduated, and I resigned my commission in 1988 because of Iran-Contra, among other things, because I was not about to support a presidency that was running around the world doing illegal things. And if we thought that was bad, obviously nothing compared to what's going on now.
Dana, I feel like you've had this long ass history of resistance, and like as someone that can be, I feel like I'm your offspring's age, because my dad is Vietnam era. You know, it means a lot to me, and I want to say this very loudly. It means a lot to me as a younger vet, being able to look up to you and Tim and the older generation of veterans that have been resisting for an extremely long time. And you said you resigned your commission, and you know, we talked about, Carl actually showed a picture of Joy, who was arrested with me, and she went through the conscientious objection process last year. And so I do want to thank you as a younger era vet, to, you know, say I look up to people like you that have been doing this for a long time, for generations of vets like me, to be able to come to and resist the government and the, you know, oath we took. Because without me being able to stand on your shoulders and the shoulders of, you know, Michael McPherson and people that have been doing this a very long time, our generation would not have the playbook that y'all have been playing by for years. So I do want to say a thank you as a younger generation for resisting for an extremely long time.
Well, you're welcome. And by the way, as a little historical note, I was actually on the National Board of Directors for Veterans for Peace back in 2003 through 2005, and I was one of the board members who actually initially hired Michael McPherson to the VFP Executive Director position. So yes, I'm well aware of Michael.
Yep.
Um,
So I wanted to give Carl a chance to ask a question as well. Go ahead, Carl.
Put me on the spot. I'm over here responding to chats and everything, and you got me. So, Dana,
At least
here's
you unmuted your mic, so that's good.
yeah, absolutely. I was ready for you, kind of ready for you on that aspect. Dana, the question I have for you, I guess, is a lot of veterans, especially your age, right? And I'm not telling you that you're old or anything, but a lot of veterans your age and a lot of veterans in mine and Katie's era are very much conservative, MAGA-esque individuals, right? And they have a tendency to look at individuals like yourself, like Katie, like Tim, and say explicitly that, you know, you are a disgrace in uniform because you are not being patriotic. Or they will say that they support ICE and everything that they're doing because they believe that illegals should not be in the United States. What do you tell people like that? How do you respond to them?
In the past, I've tried to sit down and have conversations with them. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. my response to them most of the time was, it depends on how you want to define patriotism. I said, we have tons of examples throughout the history of the United States of people dissenting against not only the federal government, but state and local governments when they thought something was wrong and they wanted to try and get it changed. I mean, I can think of at least one president by the name of Teddy Roosevelt who basically said, loyalty to this country means loyalty to the Constitution and to the nation and not to the presidency. Okay. So for somebody to claim that I'm not being patriotic because I'm protesting what I consider to be the inhumane treatment of other human beings, I find on it, I guess, two things. Number one, it's very disappointing, and I kind of wonder about, the humanity of the individual who's making that claim. And secondarily, obviously, they have no clue that, or don't want to have a clue, that blind loyalty to a government can cause all kinds of problems. It causes dictatorships. It causes theocracies. It causes abuse. It causes all kinds of things, because then you become the so-called good German of the last century by saying, well, it's not affecting me, and as long as it's not affecting me, I don't care what's happening to anybody else. So now after all this time of being under Trumpism, those individuals who are still enabling that particular government, in my mind, are a lost cause, and I have neither the time nor the energy to be attempting to change their minds. Usually my response to them now is two words, and the first one starts with an F, and that's pretty much the extent of the conversation, because, I've got more important things to be doing than trying to convince somebody who, after a minimum of 10 years, can't see the forest for the trees.
I appreciate that, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I am new at the whole protesting side of things. I've been really radicalized as of late by Katie. She's gotten me involved in a lot. And when I first met her, there was no way I was wearing my uniform to a protest. And next thing I know, I'm in DC wearing my cami top to a protest and believing 1,000% in it. So the next question, or the follow-up question I have for you with regards to this, is, given the way that the government is cracking down, we just saw 100-plus-year sentences being given to protesters down in Texas. Does that make you waver in your resolve to protest and call these things out, or does that solidify your desire to make sure that we stand firm?
In my particular case, it solidifies it, because, I'm on the downside of this particular existence anyway, and like I said, I have no sense of self-preservation, and I refuse to allow the republic to turn into a dictatorship. We all have a responsibility in our mind to stand up and applaud people and ourselves when we're doing the right things, and then also criticize when things are not going the way that we think that they should be. That's part of being in a so-called representative democracy, and those who sit on the sidelines, in my mind, are you kind of have to wonder what's going on, although I will make one exception to the rule in that case. There is a segment of this society that for way too long, for decades actually, regardless of who's been in power, who have gotten the short end of the stick, and they primarily poverty-stricken minorities, and I'm including the indigenous in that, and women. And if they decide that after having made numerous attempts to change the system, using the system the way it's supposed to be used, and nothing changes, and then they decide that they're no longer going to vote, as an example, in many respects, I don't fault them for that. Okay, it's like, why waste the time? But for the rest of us, especially those of us who come from European heritage, whether our ancestors were ever part of anything that was bad or not, we are still the predominant ethnic group in this country. And it is our responsibility, in my mind, not the responsibility of those being oppressed, but those who are part of the system that was created as the oppressors. It is our responsibility to tear those systems down. And so that's another thing that keeps me going also, is because just by accident of birth, I was born in the United States of America. I happen to be 98% European in descent, but I'm also descended from Vikings, and I'm not about to put up with bullshit. Okay? So, and oh, by the way, Vikings did not have horns on their helmets. So there we go. Okay?
Thanks. Katie, your thoughts. What do you have for Dana? What questions do you have for him? I just want to make sure we're covering all bases.
So, Dana, as somebody that has been arrested, right, and I was charged and I paid a fine, kind of the same process you went through, but with 60 other veterans at the time and military families. When you were sitting in your detention facility with undocumented and then yourselves, right, and you were eventually separated. When we were arrested, we were kept in just a completely different building. How is it on the inside of being inside a facility and a detention facility? Can you explain? I'm a builder, so I look around and notice everything in a building. What are the conditions like on the inside of those buildings? Can you tell us?
Well, in the case of Broadview, because actually that's the first and only DHS facility I've ever been in, although I've heard descriptions from numerous people back in Washington State and other places about, like what the Northwest Detention Center is like. But in that particular facility, it's relatively small, and it was not designed to be a detention center. It was designed to be a processing center, which basically means they haul them in, they do whatever paperwork that they need to do, try to get some answers out of them, hold them for a few hours, and then take them off to an actual detention center. In the case of Broadview last year, although they claim it's not happening now, but last year from about the beginning of September through probably the end of November at a minimum, they were actually detaining people inside of that facility for 3 or 4 days. No bunk facilities, no way to cook food. They were buying half sub sandwiches from Subway. The toilet facilities were insufficient for the number of people that were in there. Water was hard to come by and all that other stuff. And in fact, it got so bad that another federal judge in the Northern District of Illinois actually wrote if I remember correctly, 120 some odd page ruling against DHS about the appalling conditions inside of that facility, and said that they needed to clean it up and get those people out of there and get them to actual detention centers. Now, depending upon whether you're in a detention center being run directly by the United States government, or whether it is being run by a contracted organization like the GEO Group, which runs the Northwest Detention Center, I think or another private company runs the one down in Dilley, Texas, and there's a bunch of others that are supposedly going to be run by private contractors. Depends upon to what extent people are not being abused. But we're hearing the horror stories about people dying in custody because of lack of medical attention. There are reports of children being raped by private contractors, if not government officials. There are, horrendous conditions when it has to do with water and food and living conditions like before they shut alligator Alcatraz down in Florida. Okay, so it just depends on where you are and who's running the thing and who's allowed to get away with what. So what I saw on the inside was only a minute part of what's going on across the system, but people need to understand this has been going on for years. It wasn't just the Trump administration that did this. They have made it worse, but it's been going on for years under both Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah. So, Dana, I've been to Broadview. I've been to Burlington here in Massachusetts, where I live now. Uh, and it's just heartbreaking. I think of Broadview with those concrete bunkers or barriers lining the street. And on one side of the street, that's where the families go and they try to bring their medications to their loved ones. And an officer, or I'm sorry, an agent comes out. Usually, actually, it's a state trooper who comes out, takes it from them, then brings it over to the agent. It's just heartbreaking to watch, and it's this slow walk. They're in tears, and slow walk away. They're in tears. It's just heartbreaking for me personally to see that over and over and over again. One thing I took from Broadview was one man sat at the barrier on the family side and just read the rosary, said the rosary, and just stood there every day for like 3 days that I was there. It was, and you just the heavy Hispanic population in the Chicago area. They tried to do a mass, a Palm Sunday mass. They wouldn't let them bring communion to the residents inside of the ICE facility. These are priests. They turned them away. It says a lot to me about our country that people aren't more outraged about this. So I want to close that angle of it right now, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Major Watson. And would just get your views on that situation and the courage it took for him to do what he did with 17 years in the Air Force. You mentioned that you left the Air Force in '88, I believe, which is about when I got out too. So, but can you talk a little bit about Major Watson and kind of, what he did and what lessons that can offer to the rest of us?
So, Major Watson is also an Air Force Academy grad, class of 2009, if I remember correctly. And he's been on active duty for 17 years. And from what I understand of his philosophy and stuff, he was even out protesting last year, although he was not wearing a uniform and he was trying to hide his identity, so to speak, but at least get out and protest because he was appalled at what the administration was doing. And I suspect that it had to do directly with what he considered to be the illegal orders that have been handed down by the felon in the White House and the guy that wants to be Ares, the god of war, and all these other things. There's three parts of the UCMJ that are applicable here. Number one is Article 88, having to do with bad-mouthing people in civilian positions of authority, and if you are a commissioned officer, it's an absolute no-no to publicly do that, especially if you're in uniform. Then the other two articles are Article 90 and 92, which basically revolve around refusing to follow illegal orders. So for him to stand up and do what he did, I've had some discussions with some of my classmates from the academy, one of whom actually retired as a two-star general, about this, and they're kind of on the fence about whether what he did was correct or not. and because if they're still following the concept of civilian control of the military, so that we don't end up with a military dictatorship. And I agree with them in principle on that, but on the other side of the coin, we are technically not at war under the Constitution because no war has been declared. This is reportedly a democratic republic. We are supposed to be questioning those who we hire to govern us, and so on and so forth. And so for him to do that, I think, was extraordinarily brave. His career, I would suspect, is ended. The question will become whether they give him a dishonorable discharge and throw him into prison for a while. But that can always be appealed, obviously. And I'm thinking to myself, why is this field grade officer with 17 years in service got more cojones than all of the flag officers that are currently still on duty in the Pentagon and elsewhere around the world, among others? What in the hell is wrong with all the generals and the admirals, all the commissioned officers that are still doing what they're doing, and the senior non-commissioned officers in all branches of the military? Why are they not standing up and saying, no, we are not going to be bombing boats in the Caribbean. We're not going to be bombing boats off the coast of Colombia. We are not going to drop bombs in Iran. We're not going to fire on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. We're not going to invade Greenland. Why aren't there more people doing that? This tells me that either we have, and I'm going to be very blunt here, a whole lot of cowards that are currently wearing the uniform, or we have a bunch of people that agree with the Trump administration, and I'm looking forward to seeing Nuremberg 2.0, because I want them tried and convicted and incarcerated, and if necessary, unfortunately, hung from the highest yardarm, because they are just as bad as the people that they think. Back to the old saying about I was just following orders during the original Nuremberg trials in Germany, doesn't fly. It has not flown. It violates international law. Okay? So that's what my thoughts are about Major Watson. I wish him all the best. I will do whatever I can in my small part to help support him, and I encourage other people to do that also. But unless we get more people rebelling, not to take over the government, but to say, no, we're not going to follow illegal orders, then we have a very suspect military that's going to be coming out of the end of the Trump regime. And that regime will end. It's just a matter of how bad is it going to be when it does end.
So I appreciate that, Dana, and I'm going to jump in here real quick because I think I'm the only one with the current viewpoint that I have, which is very contrarian to yours. And here's my viewpoint on this situation. I think that what Major Watson did was impulsive and was displaying a measure of a lack of self-control on behalf of himself as an officer. And I think it was conduct unbecoming of an officer of the uniformed services of the United States of America. I understand and I agree and concur with his message. That does not mean that I condone what he did. The United States military has an illustrious history of being apolitical. It has an illustrious history of not wading into the political discourse that is the mess of our political world in our country. The United States military, when officers like Major Watson do what he did, it takes away and varnishes the image of the United States military with regards to being that impartial organization. While I understand we all have the First Amendment right to do X, Y, and Z, 100%, and I 100% support it. What Major Watson did was outside of that right because he was portraying himself as a representative of the United States military. And him doing that is varnishing our reputation. In addition to that, It is the veteran's job, our job, to be their voice, because the active duty should never, ever, ever wade into a political discussion. And so, if we are failing to do our job to such a point that Major Watson feels that he is incapable of allowing us to do it for him, then what that means is that we're losing ground somewhere and we need to fix ourselves. But I personally do not think that what Major Watson did was in any way courageous or beneficial to good order and discipline, or did anything positive for the anti-fascist, anti-Trump effort in our movement. That's all I got.
Okay, I appreciate that. One thing that I will say for everybody to consider is if the military, as it's currently, the people that are in there continue to do what they're doing, and there are no consequences for that, then I would suggest that the image of the military is going to further degrade than it already is. I've been noticing in a lot of social media and elsewhere that there is a slowly rising tide of absolute disgust with the United States military. And this is by civilians across the board. Now, whether that extends to those of us who used to be in or not, sometimes it spills over and sometimes it doesn't. But there's an awful lot of people out there that have been paying attention and they're pissed off and they don't understand why people just don't refuse to do things that are, in their minds, criminal. Okay, so there's that part of it also. Could Watson have taken a different route? Yeah, there's always different routes to do that. But he's decided to sacrifice himself, so it is what it is for the time being.
But isn't it our job as veterans to try to tamper or adjust the image that is being made? Like, for example, civilians are saying, why aren't our military personnel refusing to do X, Y, or Z? The reality is, if you really look at it, they are. Like, they are actively refusing to do X, Y, and Z, because if you examine the way that things are going and the way that certain major events are taking, you can tell that there is an effort to thread the needle without making it a political military versus this administration game, right? So I would say that I get it. I understand that people have that question, but it's our job as vets to explain to them what is actually going on and why they aren't seeing more of a protest effort or movement from the military right now.
Okay.
I'd like to build off of that, Carl. And I disagree to some extent with you. I do think Major Watson was courageous. I do know the person he was working with before he made this decision. It was not impetuous. It was well thought out. He consulted with legal people. There's a lot more to it that we don't know. Kind of as Paul Harvey used to say, Dana knows who Paul Harvey was. The rest of you may not, but the rest of the story. And you know, so I disagree. I do think he made a conscious choice. I don't think it was spur of the moment. I don't even think it was spur of the week. He spent a lot of time thinking about what he was going to do. I think you have to take a step back and look at what this administration, Trump 2.0, has done across the board to American institutions. And what they have done is they have tried to reshape them into a proto-fascist approach to running our country. And so there are going to be some people who are going to say, I will not stand for this. Or what did the dude used to say? Uh, this will not stand. I forget the word he used. This aggression will not stand. But they're tearing apart our institutions, whether it's judicial, legislative, law enforcement, military, everything. They're tearing it apart and they're building a fascist machine. And that's my opinion. And, so I understand the whole concept of, good order and discipline in the military. But he made that decision and he weighed exactly what it was going to cost him. 17 years in, you don't go and do something like that impetuously. And so, you know, I think when you look at the Center on Conscience of War and the Quakers and the amount of conscientious objectors that they're now processing and trying to help, that tells you our military institution is being shaken to the core. And he hit what he did is just another symptom of that. Katie had a question. Go ahead, Katie.
I don't really have a question. I want to like kind of push back on Carl just a smidge, right? Because I want to say, fuck good order and discipline, and fuck decorum. When we are literally bombing boats with fishermen, when we are we are using National Guard to help federal agents snatch children off U.S. streets. Fuck good order and discipline. I am with Dana and with Tim on this only because I am a student of history. History has said that the military has a long history of active duty soldiers standing up to poor orders. In Vietnam, that's how we knew about melee, right? That's how we fucking found out, is that there was an officer that stopped it and stood up and said enough is enough. During the Cold War, you had the Russian officer who refused to send a nuke and start a nuclear war. You have a long history of military members standing up. During Vietnam, right, there was a whole movement called Out Now, right? It was led by Vietnam fucking veterans and active duty Vietnam people who threw their medals in protest. That's where we got conscientious objection, was Vietnam. Is that you had enough people that were in the military that stood up and said, enough is fucking enough. And right now we're at that precipice, right? Is we have invaded Venezuela and kidnapped their fucking sitting president. We have people talking about invading Greenland. We all know, sitting here, the four of us, who is next on the chopping block? Cuba. We all fucking know it because nobody talks about Cuba enough, that we have a fucking embargo of that country and we are starving children. Starving them of power, of water, of fuel. Our government. And until the military says we are not going to take Cuba, we are not going to take Ghana, because I listen to conservative talk radio. I grew up in a conservative home, so I listen to conservative talk radio to see what we're doing next. And they're all talking about Ghana, and it's not anything we are tracking. And when we have our brothers and sisters in arms sitting on the USS Lincoln in fucking, like, it's absurd. And so for me, Major Watson, yeah, he is a hero. We need many more of him. We need people refusing the orders, because I am a firm believer in what Dana said. When Nuremberg 2.0 comes, I am going to be the first fucking one naming names. Because guess what? At the end of World War II, I say it to everybody, guess what they called the Germans that were not a part of the resistance? They called them fucking Nazis. Because that's what they were. They did not stand up to stop the machine. And until we have members like us sitting here that are saying, hey, we should probably not have fucking concentration camps. Hey, we should probably follow the fucking Constitution. Hey, we should probably not let our democracy fail because of some psychopath in the fucking White House. Like, so until we have more military members that are refusing, just flat out refusing illegal orders, like bombing fucking boats, Because saying I was just following orders, because when we get to the trials of like what actually happened during this administration, it's not just going to be Hegseth. And that's what military members have to fucking realize. It's not them. It's the person that pushed the fucking button to. You're also getting charged because you have the responsibility under UCMJ to stand up to illegal and immoral orders. It is within the UCMJ. Carl.
So I'm gonna say something that's just gonna piss everyone off, and that's okay. And so here's what I'm gonna start out with. Everything that you described, from the invasion of Cuba to the bombing of boats with fishermen to the not invasion of Cuba, but the surrounding of Cuba, the invasion of Venezuela, if that's the right country, even the Iran situation, right? If you look at every single one of them, the way that the operation was structured, they're not just following orders. They were following orders because they assessed that they were within the legal confines of the law, right? The person or the folks on the ships and the helicopters that are bombing it and actively engaging with those boats in the water were given the information and the intel that said those were hostile actors and that they needed to be taken out. And
I am
so
going to push back. I'm pushing back because they fired the JAG officers. Carl, if they had an actual JAG office full of JAG officers, what was the first thing that Hegseth did? What was the first thing? He fired JAG. And we all know that. So when we are given orders, it is normally put through multiple layers of JAG officers to ensure that it's not only constitutional, that it follows a myriad of international laws that we follow. Because guess what? We're in fucking treaties around the world. And guess what? It's not happening. That's why we're bombing fishermen, which is against international law, and nobody is doing anything.
But
it's against international law and the Geneva Conventions. We are bombing boats.
Here's the thing. They were given the intel that it was a hostile actor. It was designated hostile. I have to believe that the individuals pulling the trigger wouldn't look at that situation and say, no, man, that's a fisherman, and be given the opportunity to make that judgment call. That's not how that would work. They would go out and they would do the operation given the information that they were provided. And at the altitude and the level that they were on approach with, they didn't have the ability to determine that, hey, they were wrong and the information was off. So at the end of the day, we can't really hold them responsible. And what I'm trying to get to is that disobeying orders is very delicate. Determining if it is lawful or not is very delicate. That's a very fine line to walk. And you're right, they fired the JAG officers, 100%. There's still other JAG officers that are out there that are capable of providing that legal wherewithal when it comes to that. What I'm trying to say is that the biggest difference between what you're talking about, which is disregarding unlawful orders, is the fact that Major Watson actively made a decision to represent the armed forces and say that he spoke for the Air Force when he said Trump needs to be impeached, which is, again, wading into political discourse as a service organization instead of allowing for those service organizations to remain apolitical and outside of the political atmosphere.
And Carl, I will just say, because I have spoken to people who advised him, that he did it very consciously. I understand your comments about order and discipline and politics not being in the military. But when you look what's going on with the flag officers or general officers and how they're being, it's not just the JAGs who got thrown off the USS Pentagon. It was also anybody in the command staff who didn't toe the line. They were jettisoned, or if they had the wrong color, or if they had the wrong body parts. And so this goes back to my point about institutions. They have wrecked that institution. I would say, Carl, if we were living in a previous world, where we had those safeguards in place, where we had those institutions in place to guard against this being perverted to such a level, then yes, then Major Watson maybe had maybe should not have done what he did. But we're not in that world anymore, Carl. We are not in that world. I'd like to get Dana's viewpoint on what we just discussed, and then we're probably going to have to wrap this up because we do have some other things to do, and we've gone a little long. And I appreciate Dana staying with us. Dana, based on what you just heard us three go at it with, what's your perspective? And we'll close out with that.
Well, my thoughts are that if your opponent is playing the game, so to speak, in good faith and following an agreed upon set of rules, that's one thing. But when your opponent ignores the rules or flagrantly violates them, and you continue to play by whatever those rules are, I think that that's a fool's errand. Because yes, this is an extraordinary time where we don't have good faith actors on the so-called other side any longer. There is another individual who graduated a year after I did in the same squadron that I did at the academy, who eventually became the Deputy Judge Advocate General for the entire United States Air Force. And I've stayed in contact with him over the years. And I can tell you that in his estimation, the JAGs that are doing what they're doing are no better than all of the attorneys in the last 20 to 30 years who wrote ridiculous legal opinions, primarily for Republican administrations, that eventually were found to be either illegal or unconstitutional. And that basically, if you know what the word quisling means, and if that doesn't ring a bell, the word collaborator, those individuals are basically collaborating with the enemy. And as far as I'm concerned, you don't negotiate with the enemy on the battlefield. You negotiate with the enemy after the battle has stopped and there is a reason to do so. Right now, we're still in the middle of the battle. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Dana. So, Dana, I want to give you a chance just to kind of share the groups you're working with and any other information that you'd like to give to veterans who are protesting and may end up in the situation that you're in. If you could do that just so as we wrap up this portion of the program.
Okay, so I'm an active member of 5051, obviously. I'm also an active member of Common Defense, and I am a kind of a behind-the-scenes member of Veterans for Peace. As I mentioned before, I work with the ACLU and League of Women's Voters on a local level, and a variety of other things. My words of wisdom to everybody is if you decide to go out and protest, make sure you are prepared. One of the mistakes that I made when I went to Broadview in September of last year was I went there on a whim. I should have done things like written the National Lawyers Guild phone number on my forearm in indelible ink. I should not have taken my phone with me. I should have had a buddy who, if I got arrested, they would know where the hell I was, or at least I could hand my key fob off to them and they could take my car wherever it needed to be. So you need to be prepared. You also need to be prepared from the standpoint of understand whatever, to the best of your ability, whatever the relationship is in your local area between local law enforcement, that includes state, county, and municipal, and how they are interacting or not with federal agencies. And it's not just DHS, it's the FBI, Drug Enforcement Agency, ATF, and all the rest of them, because some of them are volunteering or getting corralled into doing detainment work. Some states, like the state of Illinois, we have a state law where our local law enforcement is forbidden from working with federal law enforcement when it comes to immigration issues. Okay? They cannot do it. Those are commonly known as 287G agreements, and you need to find out if your local police force or your county sheriff or your state troopers or whoever have 287G agreements with the federal government, and if they do, you need to raise some hell. Okay? But also understand that there's a lot of people in those local law enforcement agencies that agree with what the regime is currently doing, and they can be just as bad, if not worse, than CBP and ICE. So you go into it understanding that there is more than just a passing chance that you're going to be arrested and in some cases abused. Okay? If you go into it with that mindset, then I think you're going to be okay, and be prepared. That's the biggest thing that I can say. Do your due diligence. Okay?
Well, Dana, I want to thank you for coming on our on the smoke pit tonight. This has been a very enlightening conversation, and I think it helps our membership know, because we are very active. We show up at the protest. Katie's been arrested. My wife tried to get arrested in Burlington, and they refused to. They're not gonna arrest a 4'10" white Italian American who knocks on their door like she did and asks if they're looking for nurses. And then asks, "Do you have any nurses in here?" They just told her to get lost. But anyway, I just want to thank you for sharing your story with us, and for the stands you have been taking, not just recently, but also, you know, for the last 16 years. I think it's important that, we all do what we can do, where we can do it, with what we have, when we can do it. And you're a great example of that. You exemplify what American courage should be. So thank you very much. We're going to move into the next part of our podcast. You're
Appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome to stay.
Okay?
We're going to fire for effect, Carl. Is that correct? Did I
Carl's
go?
on mute. Carl's on mute. Carl's on mute.
Me and that damn mute button, man. Like that, I was ready earlier and then I wasn't.
I'm going to stay on, but I'm going to get some coffee.
All right.
Alrighty.
Go.
So I've got 4 videos for us, and I know that in the run of show you've seen the titles. Oh God, it's on God, it's a polycule. Safeguarding things can get complicated. Available for the low price, and then totally real and complete Marine Corps exercises that are not gay but are totally straight. So without further ado, we're going to start with the polycule. I'm going to go ahead and there we go. Polycule it is.
The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. That is a book about a polyamorous woman living in her devil ways. I feel disgusting just touching it. Having a polycule with her and 7 men. And that is not what God intended. No. God intended for men to marry a woman when she turns 19, suck the life out of her, make her have 8 children, and then leave her for a 22-year-old. Yeah. And that's God's way. And so 7 husbands, no, you get 1. You get 1. Greedy. Disgusting. Liberals are so greedy.
I got nothing other than that was hilarious.
I'm getting better at these funny ones.
You are. That one's good. So for everybody watching, I grew up a conservative Catholic, and as I've been doing advocacy work for over a decade now, and I am learning so many new terms. That polycule is one I've learned in the last 6 months in our group, and so that's perfect. That's funny.
Carl, the one thing I wish we had Dolly Parton music today, but we don't. But we do have a great Dolly Parton quote regarding that, and that is, she was asked about coming from a family with 6 boys and 6 girls, and being asked if she was Catholic, and she said, no, just horny Baptists. That's my Dolly tidbit. I'm a Dolly. I love Dolly. Always will.
I mean, you grew up with her, so I mean, it's understandable. It's like my Britney Spears or Lady Gaga. All right, so next one. I tried to make an old joke and it fell on its face. Look at that. Next one. Safeguarding things can get complicated. Just wait for it.
Is voting a constitutional right? Yeah, but only American citizens should vote. I agree. Now, is owning a gun a constitutional right? Yeah, but no but. Okay, so how do we stop people from voting illegally? The SAVE Act, we need more laws and regulations. Even if that makes voting harder for some American citizens? Yep, we need safeguards. Okay, so how do we make it harder for criminals to get guns? You can't. What do you mean? Criminals will get guns anyway. So how about we just add safeguards to make it harder? Nope, because then you make it harder for law-abiding citizens to get a gun. But you're okay making it harder for law-abiding citizens to vote. Well, that's different. Why? Because owning a gun is a constitutional right. So is voting. Yeah, but...
That's it in a nutshell.
That's their logic. I think that's what drives me so crazy being a conservative, like until a month ago. Yeah, like that, the logic that this Katie is a Democrat. I am a registered Democrat now. But it's that whole constitutional argument, right? Of like, but it's a part of the Constitution, says voting. Like, I am a gun owner. I say I protect my First Amendment right with my second. I live in Florida, and I'm a Florida native. And so I have guns. Plenty of my neighbors have guns. But I do believe that there needs to be safeguards for weapons.
Yeah, so I'm of the same opinion that there do need to be safeguards for weapons. Although I also support the Second Amendment like super entirely, and it's always confused me. You know, I asked my uncle when I was growing up. I was like, why can't we just have like a national database of all people who want to have a gun, and then we know and everything's fine? And he was super against it. But now they want a they want a national registry of every single voter in the United States. But we can trust the federal government for that, but we can't trust them for a national registry of gun owners. Where is their logic coming from, and like why? Why do they have to be hypocrites?
And we can swab Dana's cheek and put that in a database and keep it for 50 years. But we can't keep a proper register of who owns guns and who owns how many guns and what kind of guns, and who sold their guns privately. We can't come up with a system that works for that. But Dana's spit, we'll know about that 50 years from now. I'll be filing a Freedom of Information Act for Dana's spit.
I will say that as a native Floridian, the gun show loophole should close. I have utilized it myself, and I will admit that. However, it is the most dangerous loophole I've ever seen in my state for gun ownership, because as someone, I go to gun shows, and for anybody watching that's like, oh, people go to gun shows. Yes, I am that redneck. I go to gun shows, and there is people that walk around with like just little signs with the type of weapon they have, and you can walk up to them and you can just exchange information and buy the weapon like in the parking lot, as long as you don't walk up to a table that is like owned and rented as a space, that is when the 3-day wait happens, is when you buy from a table, like a vendor. But if you buy from somebody like just personal, like it's literally like, here's my ID, here's cash, blah, blah, blah. Now, there is like, I have a friend who is an idiot and sold a gun to an underage human being. The underage human being then committed a crime with said weapon. And when the ATF showed up to ask him, he lied. And so now he is in jail, which he should be. But that gun show loophole does need to close. Like, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I don't use it. I use the fuck out of it. It is what it is. But it does need to close. As a responsible gun owner, the loophole allows for plenty of gun sales to go unknown by anybody.
You know what else I'd like to see? I would like to see advocates of gun regulation able to speak intelligently about what guns are, right? Like this whole mantra of like being against assault weapons, or he brought in a military assault style rifle. Like that's not a thing, right? Like that's not a thing. Describe what an assault weapon is, and they're going to tell you a whole slew of things. They're going to tell you that they want to ban semi-automatic trigger systems, right? And like, if you do that, now you're banning handguns because handguns are semi-automatic. So like, we need people who know what guns are and can understand the nuances as they apply to firearms, so that when they get in there, they're not talking out of their ass and making themselves look like morons, and then in turn making people like you and me, Katie, who love guns, look like morons because we're associated with them. That's what I'd like to see.
I'm at the opposite end of that, though, like, because you said you are a firm believer of the Second Amendment, and so am I. But I think Brian would be happy with this. I'm a libertarian when it comes to the Second Amendment, because of the second half of the Second Amendment that nobody ever discusses, of like standing up to a tyrannical government. And so therefore, I'm a libertarian in the sense that if I have the money and I can buy a tank, I should be able to own a tank because the government has one. And if I pass the background check and I'm not a psychopath, I would buy a tank, like from D-Mill, because you can from DRMO right here at NAS. They have DRMO like literally maybe 10 miles from where I'm sitting. And you can buy deuce and a halves and all sorts of military equipment from there. And so I, as a responsible gun owner, should be able to buy a tank.
Okay,
right,
but
and I agree with you actually on that. Like when I talk about gun regulations, I'm just saying gun regulations because that's what the Democrat side does, and I guess that's our side now. But they talk about gun regulations and gun laws, and the way that I look at that is, if you're going to talk about regulating a gun, know what the fuck you're talking about, right? So for the same thing, like if you're going to regulate a woman's body, you better be a fucking woman or her doctor. Otherwise, shut your fucking mouths, right? Like that's the way I look at it from that point of view in that aspect. So, like, if I wanted a tank, I should be allowed to buy one, right? If I wanted a fucking bazooka, I should be allowed to fucking buy one. If I want and have the ability to buy an F-35, which is a piece of shit, I should be allowed to purchase one because American capitalism and all that jazz. So with you, 100%.
yeah, but we're not giving you any ballistic missiles, Carl.
I'd probably handle it better than our current president.
Facts.
Well, all I know is Natalie's carrying the football.
There's a big riff going on right now. That's an interesting one. So moving on, next one, sexy. This is sexy MAGA. So enjoy.
We have the very first Donald Trump dildo.
Oh, this is a hot item. I've been wanting one of these.
Me too.
I'm really excited about this one, but let's show the people what's in the box.
Absolutely, let's open this up. Wow, it's so lifelike.
Yes, it was made from an actual real-life mold.
But what if I want the real thing?
Well, Karen, in a way, we've all been getting that for almost a decade.
This would be a great gift for any MAGA lady. Do we have anything for the boys?
Absolutely, Karen. For the MAGA boys, we got something with much more power. Power.
And that's why you don't get a ballistic missile, Carl.
There's so much to unpack there, especially as a lesbian. I'm not sure what I was envisioning when we were unboxing a dildo box, but it was not that. Not that.
I will say this, just the Trump shopping network. I like that Dana lives near Crystal Lake, Illinois, and Crystal Lake, Illinois, the Trump store just closed there. And the lady was moaning and groaning. She obviously didn't have enough dildos on hand. If she probably, there was a demand and she just didn't meet it.
I have so hear me out then. So I am going to make a call to action for lesbians to try and turn MAGA women. I feel like this could happen. It could be a niche project of lesbians around the country to disrupt MAGA women.
I noticed you didn't go niche project.
And I mean, to be fair, all their men are gay, breaking
That is
Grindr
true.
every time they get together. So
That is true. Republican men are very submissive. It is fucking intense. A step too far? I don't think so. I feel like if we could convince enough lesbians that are recruiters for the team that have the time and the energy, we could recruit a bunch of MAGA women.
All is fair in love and war.
It is, and every strategy works. So I'm not doing it. I am not. I'm not volunteering for this project or leading it. I'm just saying.
yeah, I saw that and I immediately thought this has to get on the show. And to the audience who are asking where I find these, my Facebook algorithm is all screwed up.
Kind of like the guy who owns the account.
Hey now. All right, last one. Military antics. I'm not going to give you a title, but here you go.
Hey there, war fighters. I know many of you out there are saying, how can I be an alpha Marine? How can I get out on the battlefield and crush skulls? Well, good news. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War from the Department of War, wants us to come up with some exercises for you to do on the battlefield. Now, keep in mind, these are real Marine Corps exercises designed to get you ready for war. Go! Get up! Get up! Kill! Kill! War crimes! Get up there! Yeah! Yeah! Get up there! Just do it, son! Come on, we're going to war! Now, get up there! Yeah, come on, get up there! Come on! So hard for war! So hard to kill enemies! That's Spider-Man! You look to me like Come on, come on, come on, touching the penis.
You're muted, Carl.
Can confirm those are all real exercises, and I've done all of them.
Same. I was watching those going, I have partaken in quite a few of those in my career. Tim, did you partake in any of those in your career?
No, I was back before our institution started to fail. We didn't do shit like that.
When I first saw it, all I could hear was Lisa watching that and then responding with, "But why?"
We scared away the guest with the dildos.
We did. It's okay. We love Dana. Oh God. Oh man. That tracks. For those watching that are civilians, that don't have no understanding of the military, this is normal. Those exercises that look very homoerotic. It's 100% why your veteran coworkers that are a little off, you're like, what's wrong with them? That, and were transported in cattle cars.
Make your buddy smile. I said that once at a Cub Scout meeting. Yeah. And one of the other leaders said, "Did you just say what I thought you said?"
I think one of the funniest things that we've actually ever discussed as a group, like, and this is the first time I'm ever going to say it on live, every veteran has had to do a duck walk and had their butthole looked at by a very old man. And it is very strange. Oh, you had a woman? Oh.
At the MEPS. Had to bend over and cough twice at the MEPS.
Yeah. And duck walk in front of other human beings. And so why your veteran friends are a little bit off is because we all partook in this. And then years later, when you're adults, you're like, that was weird. Like that was a little strange. Yeah.
Yep, that was. All right, Vivid, listen. I'm an actual homosexual. I didn't like it.
Yeah, but you were a Marine homosexual, so.
Oh God, that's so funny.
It was a little more forceful than if the Air Force did it, for instance.
It was just strange.
Oh man.
That's all I got. What? Vivid.
It is.
Listen.
It is.
Not
100%.
all of us are able to pull off the drag queen-esque situation. I can't. There's no way.
Even Dolly lost her look-alike contest at to a drag queen.
I remember that. Yeah.
God bless Dolly.
Absolutely.
So do we have calls to action, Carl?
Yeah, we have. Katie, did you want to talk about 926?
Yes. So on 926, veterans around the country, veterans and military families are doing a call to action. It is being put on by not only our group, but Veterans Against Fascism, the container that has brought you multiple things. It is in conjunction with Common Defense, our friends Lindsay Knapp and Hannah, and they will be doing a Women Veteran Ruck March across North Carolina. The flagship event will be on 926 in Fayetteville, and we will have veteran-led actions across the country. Tim was a big reason why D-Day last year was such a remarkable success. And so this year we are doing 926 in election defense because veterans across the country and military families have a responsibility to ensure that the elections are free and fair. And this is a way for our civilian counterparts to not only see that veterans are watching in your local area, it is a way for veterans and military families to tie in to their election defense networks very quickly and have a month to get trained up and ready for elections. So yes, 926.
The other thing I wanted to mention, and Dana specifically asked that we highlight this. 2 80-year-olds died this week, and they were the wrong ones. If you have never seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show, sorry, I'm getting old, and you haven't watched it in a movie theater at midnight and stood up and done the dance and thrown popcorn and everything else, hopefully we're going to have some tribute shows showing up in our theaters who need the business anyway, so I would think they would want to do it. And I do a thing on my Facebook page called the Sense of Civility, and the leader far and away of Sense of Civility posts, I've done them for 15 years now. The leader far and away of the most posts is Dolly Parton, far and away. I'm not a country music fan, but I am a Dolly fan, and a Dolly is a human fan. And unfortunately, God's got some splaining to do because he took the wrong 80-year-olds this week. He should have taken Yam Tits, Fuck Knuckle instead. So unfortunately, we're left with Yam Tits, Fuck Knuckle, and we're missing Tim, and we're missing Dolly, and Dolly in particular did a lot for veterans and for the military, and so I salute her as she heads up to the pearly gates, because I know if anybody's getting in, she's getting in. So anything else on calls to action, Carl? Did I miss anything?
I do want to highlight once more, please make the phone call. Carl, put up the phone number. Our sister in arms, a pastor, and 4 others were arrested today in Greene County, Missouri. Here is the phone number, 417-868-4040. Please call Greene County, Missouri Sheriff's Office and have them ask them kindly, do not threaten anybody, to process and release our sister in arms, Cindy Potts, and the 5 others today that were arrested in the lobby of their office protesting against the partnership between their local police force and ICE. And so please make this phone call, annoy the fuck out of them so that they will get our human and the other 5 human beings that are in their custody right now out.
And then Tim, to answer your question, the only thing I have left is folks, like, follow, share, subscribe, comment below, help us to become more prevalent so that we can get our voices out there. We are a diverse group of veterans, and as you saw tonight, we all have different points of view or levels of our points of view that we like to talk through, and we are able to do it in a civil manner. So do make sure that you like, follow, comment, share, subscribe, all that good jazz. If you want to make sure that you never miss an episode, or you find out what episode that is available, you can sign up for an update every week on our website, 5051vets.com. You'll be able to go in there and fill that out, and we'll be able to let you know when we're going live and what we're going live about. But outside of that, that's all I got, Tim.
The last thing I'd leave us with is Substack. Please do the same for Substack. That's how we found out about Dana. Somebody sent us an article and said, could you publish this? And so please subscribe to our Substack, comment on it, share it. all of these things. Please share them so that our voice gets heard beyond just the veteran community out in the civilian world. So I've got like a minute, it looks like, before we're going to close out. So it's time for the safety brief. And I'm going to take it this time short and sweet safety brief. The first officer I ever served under was he was captain and then Major Clifford Boyce Purcell, a good old Georgia boy. And he had three rules. One, don't do anything stupid. Two, make no promises you can't keep. And three, you gotta care. And if you do number three and somehow you violate 1 and 2, as long as you care about what you're doing, that's okay. So be safe out there this weekend coming up. And please tune in next week, or I'm sorry, on Saturday for the Smoke Pit, 8 p.m. Eastern.